Hi, it's Cammy Chris Gamara, and you're listening to the Iron Hour podcast.
Well, this is the Iron Hour podcast. It's Barra here in the latest of our series of past pros. I'm joined now by footballing agent, European Championship under 18 winner, Football League trophy winner, FA Youth Cup winner, multiple promotion winner, a man who was, of course, promoted with Scunthorpe United. Not only famous for all that, but his wonderful left foot, and of course, with the ladies for those luscious blonde locks back in the day. It's Kevin Sharp on the Iron Hour podcast. How are you doing, Kev?
Yeah, all good, Andy. How are you?
Yeah, not bad at all, thank you. I hope you appreciate that introduction.
I know that was a bit over the top, mate, wasn't it? Jesus.
Well, listen,
I've
I've been getting my antennas out, and I can tell you that hairstyle went down very well.
Well, it's soon gone very well as well. It's disappeared soon, I'll tell you that. But I look back at some of them pictures and I think, wow, what was I doing? I mean, I don't know if I was a cross between sort of, I don't know, it was Gail Platt, I'd say, and Robbie Savage. We were sort of
maybe a bit of O2, 2002.
Yeah, a bit of that. Yeah. There's Chesney Hawkes in there as well. There's a bit of everything, you know. So them who can remember them, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, you got to roll with it. So right, I mean, there's a lot to get through today. I guess just kick us off at the start. So obviously born in Canada, and then moved over to Blackpool. I think it was. Being a toddler, so some downgrade that it's like Suarez were leaving Liverpool and them getting Ricky Lambert.
Yeah. No, is it? Listen, I was born in Canada, moved over. So obviously I didn't have a choice in it. I was only 2, but I moved over my parents to that village just outside Blackpool, Hambleton, and settled there really. And played.
You got that in quick, Kev, that it wasn't Blackpool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, on the outskirts. Yeah. Hey, I love Blackpool. It's a big apple of England, of course. But yeah, it was one of them where I played a lot of my football. Grew up in there till I was about 14. So, and then moved on from there, which was sort of left home at 14, which is quite young, to be honest. Because went to national school at Lillishall, which was you sort of did your school and your football in there, and yeah, that was sort of where I first started my sort of education in terms of football and education, where I played for the town, you know, local side, and then progressed to the county, and then obviously went on from there.
And at the county level, that was where you got picked up by Auxerre, right?
No, that was England schoolboys. That was under 15. We're playing against France at Wembley, and Auxerre had a couple of players playing for France who had already signed for their academy, and they had the chief scout watching, and there was only myself and Jamie Forrester, ex-Scunny, who were not signed or attached to a club, if you will. And they invite after the game. We had a good game, and they invited us to go over and have a look, you know, in the school sort of holidays. And we kept going, sort of, we kept going in the time we had off, or we'd shout either going to Man United or going to Arsenal, and we'd just keep our options open until a decision had to be made, to be quite honest. But yeah, that's how it sort of came about.
I think with Auxerre, people of this generation maybe don't recall, but it was a huge academy at the time. I mean, a massive conveyor belt of talent, and Guy Rowe obviously was the manager at the time, and well, they cultivated something quite special there, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, back then he was renowned to be, well, the club were renowned to producing from the academy to the first team the most players per year or per season. So that was a big sort of selling point for us. You know, and they were the first academy in Europe as well, where you sort of lived on site and had all your football education there. And there was 2, they were called the Centre de Formation, which was basically an academy, and he had two over the road from each other, and all the facilities were around there. The first team stadium was around there. So that was a real big selling point, to actually leave the country and turn down the likes of. I mean, I'm a big Man United fan, and to turn down the likes of them and Arsenal, who were probably the first to show real interest in me, was a big decision, and we did that.
Any kind of anecdotes for us growing up, developing in a foreign country? What was that like as a young man? There must be some stories to tell us for sure.
Well, the first one was literally the day we signed up. We obviously had all packed our bags, were ready to go, and we headed out to Auxerre, and we were met at the airport. Got to the training ground, or where we were staying on the complex at the academy, and Giroud came over to us, and there's loads of sort of press around. And Giroud came over to us when we arrived and said, "Look, put your bags in your room. You're live on RT, their main sort of news channel, if you will, because this is unique. It's never happened before. So you're going live, but you've got to do it in French." And I said, "Well, I can't speak French. I haven't got a clue. I've never done it at school. I never took it at school." So he said, "No, I want you to do it in French. I'll tell you what the questions are, and you're going to have to reply." This is within like a couple of hours of being there. So they've asked me a couple of questions. I got it all completely wrong. All the other lads are over the road watching it on a big screen, laughing because they didn't have a clue what I was saying. But it went live, literally out on French TV, their main channel, which was obviously embarrassing.
Just there, giving your best Derek Trotter impression.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, may we. But it was, that was one of the ones. Jamie wasn't too bad, to be fair, because he knew a little bit. He'd done it at school, so he got by a little bit, probably better than I did. But mine was a little bit of broken Blackpool French.
And then, you played for England at under 18 level and won a European Championship, let's not forget. I mean, playing with some outrageous talent, really. Sol Campbell, Gary Neville, Paul Scholes, Robbie Fowler. Any I'm missing off? And what was that like to play amongst that talent?
Well, at that time, you're only going off what you know now. Obviously, at that point, we were sort of all at the same level. And there were fantastic talents then, of course. But the likes of Sol Campbell, I went to school with him, so I knew him well. He was always a man mountain of a player. He could play sort of right wing, right back, centre forward, centre half, wherever. But he was some player. And the likes of Gary Neville, I sort of grew up. He used to play for Bury. We used to play against each other quite a lot for our town teams, Blackpool against Bury. So, and then also I trialled at Manchester United a lot, and would share training sessions there, and we'd come up against each other a lot, as did Paul Scholes, Nicky Butt, them types of players, and so we knew each other well, and then as we went through, I'm skipping on a little bit here, through the England levels, we became good friends anyway. So it was just the norm at that time, really. You were just sort of on that level. Now you look back and what they've achieved is, well, incredible,
Were there any kind of divas in that setup then? I'm looking here for stories of attitudes and egos all over the shop.
Well, the characters in that particular under-18s they were constantly joking about, was Robbie Fowler and Kev Gallen. He played up front for QPR, good player. But there were, you know what? It's not like we were quite well behaved. I know it's a bit boring, but we were sort of in a camp and we couldn't really do anything. And certainly in that tournament that we won, it was literally behave or you're out type of thing. It was quite disciplined.
And then moving on, then you obviously signed for Leeds. That must have been quite daunting at the time. Again, still as a young man, and the reputation and the caliber of player there at Leeds.
Yeah, Leeds was incredible. Going there because they just won the old sort of like Division One, and then it went to the Premier League, and they just started buying a lot of players and names. And when I first walked into the club, it was like, wow, these are top players: McAllister, Strachan, Batty Speed, them types that were already at the club. And you're sort of in awe of them. I was in awe of sort of Gordon Strachan because I was, like I said, supported Man United and he was there. Um, so it was incredible to be, on the same training pitch as them. That what they did and how they conducted themselves was immaculate, and it was always a pleasure to be involved with them.
And then after leaving Leeds, it must have been tough, really, because it never quite worked out. You never really broke into that first team, and then I would never say you became a fully fledged Football League journeyman, but you did have quite a few clubs towards the back end of your career. What was that like leaving Leeds, knowing it hadn't quite worked out?
Well, leaving Leeds was a decision I forced really, and I mean, I look after players now, and I certainly wouldn't advise, what I did back then. I was doing really well, playing, getting a lot of first team opportunities. I was still only young, um, and I forced the issue sort of with Howard Wilkinson. I said, look, I should be playing now. I shouldn't have been playing because Tony DeRigo was left back, who was an England international. So there's number one. But I played a lot of left midfield, so there's an argument that I could have been there, but also I had Gary Speed there, who was a top player as well. But I was impatient. I should have bided my time. And I always say, there's a bit of a phrase for me that I've always sort of kept with me is, stay as high as you can for as long as you can, because the fall is less the longer you leave it. And also you're playing in day to day with better players who will make you better, and naturally you'll get better. And I was impatient. I wanted to get away, and I chose the first club that really came to approach me really, or approach the club. And I did that, and I moved on. But if I look back, it was definitely the wrong thing to do. Even though where I went to Wigan was fantastic, I had great memories, and it was brilliant, and did great. But in hindsight, I should have stayed a little bit longer and dug my heels in a little bit more.
Well, let's get into the nitty gritty then. You eventually end up at Scunthorpe. How did that move come about?
Well, Scunthorpe was obviously a bit after, because I went to Wigan for 7 years. And then it was 2000, so it was Wigan,
2003,
yeah, and then Huddersfield and Scunthorpe. So when I was at, I mean, Scunny was, I think I came about with Lawsy, because Lawsy signed me, Brian Laws. And I'm not sure. It was just one of them where, obviously, like any player, you're out of contract. And I was available, and Russ Wilcox was assistant manager. I think he had a bit of an input as well. And they needed a left back. I think Andy Dawson had just left to go to Hull, so it sort of coincided with needing a little bit more experience in there. Ridders was there, but not quite ready. So yeah, it sort of worked, and logistically it worked as well, because we had a car school going over as well, and so yeah, it sort of all fell into place really.
And who would you have shared with? Who would have been in that car then in the early days?
So Peter talk a lot, not Beagry, Andy Keogh.
So this sounds like the Yorkshire contingent coming across.
Yeah, well, obviously, well, Keogh was at Leeds at the time. Obviously, Irish boy. There was him, and then there was, I think, who else there was? There was Richie Ryan, who was on loan from Sunderland, had a short spell with us. So there's different sort of members of the car school as we went along in different eras, you know.
And what was it like working under Morsey? Because he's got a reputation really of being from that Cloughy kind of school, and there's obviously the incident that happened at Grimsby where he chucked a plate of chicken at Benetti. What was it? Was it like the hairdryer treatment at Scunthorpe, or was he a different man by then?
For me, like Lawsey joined, how I remember it, Lawsey was during the week brilliant, you know, and he was obviously on the train. Everything was deadly serious on the train as it should be at training and what have you. Come on match day, it was completely different. He was literally like the angriest man you've ever seen. But I just think that was him, how he managed, how he dealt with that situation. Um, you know, his expectation levels were really high, and it obviously transferred to the lads on the pitch. But if he did something wrong and it was match day, he tend to, you know, at the top of the stand, he'd go and stand in there rather than in the dugout a lot. And all you could hear is him screaming if you made a mistake. It was so he was quite vocal that way. But in terms of him as a, you know, I got on with Lawsey. He was a good guy. You know, he could make him murders for certain people. You know, there's certain ones that were, you know, he'd target for sure in my period there anyway. But you know, I always got on well with him, and you know, we had good times. So yeah.
As you say, first half he was up in the gods really, looking down, and then you know, is there any kind of instances at half time where he would have gone off at players then? Because you said there he was really highly strung on a match day.
Yeah, it always, you know, and it tended to be more, not necessarily more, with the younger ones, it was more the experienced ones. So, you know, Steve Torpey, he might have because we'd have a little bit of a go back. And like Biggs was on the sort of semi-coaching staff then, so he'd have a bit of a go back as well. But they knew it wasn't it wouldn't go over the line because they were friends, and you know, that was how it was. But it never got to the extent of fisticuffs or anything like that. It was just purely professional and wanting to win, and who was right and who was wrong, and that was it, you know. And but yeah, he was an astute sort of manager. He was very, very, you know, particular how he did things, very, you know, detailed in how he did things, and the time, you know, for a club with the greatest respect that we're down there, and everything was, you know, really professional and no stone left unturned really. So it was really enjoyed my time at Scunthorpe. It was you know, a memorable time.
And there were some characters in that squad. I'm particularly thinking of the likes of Peter Beagrie. Any kind of pranksters? Anything you can call on to tell us a good anecdote from your time there?
Well, there's a lot of a lot of characters, you know, in terms of characters that have moved on and done well, and you know, in terms of managerial as well. You know, Ian Barraclough, Andy Crosby, Mark Jackson, Cliff Byrne. You know, Butts now obviously at Scunny, and then top players who've gone on as well, like, you know, to do really good things, like Keogh as well. He's gone to Australia. He's like a sporting director over there. So there's big characters, but we had the younger ones, you know, like Nathan Stanton, Matt Sparrow, you know, Terry Barwick. So Terry was an interesting one because he was a traveller.
Terry Barwick, yeah.
I
think he's from Goole, you know, actually.
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah. Well, he travelled a lot, so I don't know where he was from, to be fair. But yeah, he was a character, and he'd always sort of, wherever he went, and he'd always be on a night out. You know, he'd always during the week, he'd always make out as though he was training or whatever, and he wouldn't be. He'd always end up going out, but wherever he went out, that's where he'd park his caravan. So it's funny. So, you know, the lads would be in a hotel, but he'd take his caravan park there, you know. It was mad. So the story's coming from him. And listen, there was a group of them, the younger ones, who were just on another level, you know, in terms of what they were like. But no, he was right up there with one of the most different characters I've met in football, Terry Barwick.
And who would you have roomed with on those away days? I mean, I'm presuming you weren't in the caravan of love with Terry.
No, definitely try to stay away from him. No, it tended to be Beaks, you know, because we were sort of car school as well, and we got pretty close, to be quite honest. So it'd be myself and Peter Beagrey. If we went on pre-season tours, it'd probably be that, where we went on a couple to Holland, I think it was, and Germany as well. So yeah, it was probably Beaks, yeah.
What was the accommodation like back in those days when we're doing away games and even trips abroad? Was it high end stuff, or was it what you would expect?
The accommodation was like normal. In fairness, for a league game, it was good. It was like it would be now, to be fair. But if we went on tour or went on pre-season tour, it'd be like a university type of thing, like a complex where we do all our pre-season in the pool or on a track, or you know, running sort of in woods or whatever it may be. So it'd be on a university complex type of thing.
That first season, I recall we just about stopped up. It was like on the last day of the season. It was a really tough season, that. And then you'd have been quite a prominent name on the team sheet for that season, I guess. But moving on to the second season, that was kind of when Lee Ridley really broke into the team, and obviously it ended in promotion for us that season. But chances were kind of few and far between for you.
Yeah, the first season I played a lot, and you know, we had some really good wins, you know, and we just didn't sort of push on and finish as high as we wanted to. Then that pre-season I got injured, and that was the promotion season. And then when I got back fit, the team were doing really well, actually. It started really well, and Ridders got in. He was playing left back. I believed I was better than him, and I wasn't put straight back in. And he sort of kept that winning team, and that team that went on to get promoted, which is fine, and you know, probably the right thing to do. But I still believed. And again, I had a little bit of a spat with Lawsy over it, because again, I was quite headstrong with that. I believed I should have been playing. To the extent of, you know, we got Chelsea in the cup away, which we did well, and you know, I wanted to play in it. I was fully fit. I thought I was ready to go back in, and he didn't change the team, and I just threw my toys out the pram. I went, right, I'm not going, you know. And he went, no, you're going to be on the bench. I went, no, I'm either playing or not. And he went, right, you're not coming then. But that was the type of thing Lawsy did, and he was right to do that, because I was being petulant about it, you know, and I didn't bide my time, even though there was a few games that had gone by, and I thought I should have been playing. But as a manager, he had to make a decision on that, and he couldn't have me dictating to him. And rightly so, he said, right, go home then, stay at home. You're not coming this weekend. So I didn't sort of travel to that one, but probably for the right reasons.
Do you think that was because you'd have probably been one of the more, I would say, senior players, but you were certainly probably in your late 20s at that point? Was it hard losing your spot to a younger player?
Yeah, probably a bit of that. But I generally thought that was, you know, I should have been playing. And again, nothing against Ridders. I just thought I was a far better player than him, and putting me in and leaving Ridders out, because at that time he was my understudy, if you will. But he came through, and obviously they started the season well, and they hadn't lost many. The gaffer was keeping with that team and Ridders, so that was the only reason, really. And it was nothing personal. It was just my thoughts on it.
Really big fan of the podcast, so I will be clipping that, sending him it.
Yeah, keep it in. Ridders is a good lad. I get on well. Always got on well with Ridders and his brother. Good lads.
Yeah. When obviously, as I say, we got promoted that season, and the celebrations, the open top bus tour. Was you involved in all of that? And was that hard to celebrate considering I think you'd only played 4 or 5 times that season in the league?
Yeah, no, it was the same again, the same thing because it lasted all season, and I think the Laws had sort of made his mind up with me that I didn't want to be part of it. I was sort of like, I was happy for the lads and happy and what have you, but I didn't want to be a part of it. When you're not part of something and you feel well out of it, certainly winning. Um, and it's different now. Now the squad games, there's like 25 to 30 players in the squad. Back then, it wasn't like that. So I felt a bit of an outcast, if you will, and especially in that promotion season. Um, and I didn't feel part of it, and I never really got involved in it. I didn't. I stood away from it, and I didn't get involved in the celebrations or anything like that. I kept myself to myself, and that's how it was.
So then I guess it was quite natural that you would have left the club when your contract ended in that summer. Was that an easy decision to make? Was it a mutual thing? Did they offer you anything, or were kind of would you say the bridges were burned because of the Chelsea incident?
Yeah, that was it really. Yeah, I sort of knew that. I knew sort of, and coupled with they got promoted, and Ridders had sort of cemented that spot as left back, in the gaffer's eyes. So I knew that was the end. Yeah, for sure. It was one of them where, um, I just knew once my contract expired, I was leaving. That was a fact.
Went to Shrewsbury after Scunthorpe, and then a couple of non-league teams, and then following your life as a professional footballer, obviously moved into football management. How did that happen, and when did that happen?
Well, I sort of came to the end of my career, and I was sort of, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was going to do. I went into a bit of coaching, um, went down the route of getting my badges and what have you. And I was really undecided what I wanted to do, and ended up going to Harrogate, and Northwich Victoria as well with Neil Redfern. And it just didn't feel right. And the people, probably more the fact that people in the background, the people who ran the clubs, just didn't sit right, and they played a huge part in what happened sort of on the training pitch and on the fit. And that for me didn't sit right, and I thought I don't want to be part of that. This isn't the sort of how I see it. And I saw a different side to it, completely different side to it. And I saw it at Northwich. I was player assistant with Neil Redfern there when he was manager, and I saw it a little bit with Simon Weaver at Harrogate when he first took over, and Bill Fotherby was there. And I knew Bill from Leeds, and he was very opinionated, very vocal in what he wanted, and it sort of transpired on the pitch a little bit, and it just wasn't for me. And then my character would come out, and I get frustrated again, like a little bit at the back end of my footballing career. Um, and if I wasn't happy, I'd tell people, and then I'd just make a decision. I wouldn't be part of it. So that's that's how it was, and it just wasn't for me, that side of it.
So how did it come about then moving into the agency side?
So yeah, I sort of came away from the coaching side of it and management side of it, and then there's an agency already involved in Leeds, and it was a friend of mine who was working for this agency at the time, um, who I knew, who was he said, look, at the moment we want to. They had a few players who want to expand the business. I think your contacts would help. Um, can you, would you like to come and work for us? And I had a meeting with them, and we sort of expanded the business, added more contacts, more players, and made the actual business a lot bigger, and developed into a decent agency.
In recent times, then, what kind of players have you represented? What players do you represent today?
Um, Well, at the moment, probably the one that springs to mind is Lewis O'Brien, who's in the Premier League, and I say that because of obviously sitting in the Premier League. But there's a lot of players sort of over the years that we've represented who have either gone on and retired, but a lot of Sheffield United players. At one point, there's Billy Sharp who represented, Paddy Kenny, Nick Montgomery, Matt Kilgallen, players like that. And then there's ones like at Scunthorpe, Cliff Byrne, Mark Jackson, who is still represent now. And then there's players that, again, with the greatest respect, because they're all treated exactly the same, would be ones at say, Wigan Athletic. Tom Pearce, who had a loan spell at Scunthorpe as well.
Yeah.
Players like that. Josh Morris, who played for, did that deal to Scunthorpe as well. So there's a lot of players, throughout the leagues really, and throughout the football pyramid that we've represented, and they've gone on to different levels or still playing.
Was you still representing Josh when he left the Iron? Because I remember at the time there was so much talk on social media about him wanting to move back across the M62 kind of towards the west side of the country, but staying in the north.
Yeah, well, that's it. It was prolific that one season, wasn't it? If you remember, he scored a ridiculous amount of goals from midfield, and I think he thought that. And there was rumours of these £1 million bids coming. It was just complete rubbish, it wasn't happening. And there was interest, all right, but Scunthorpe weren't going to let him go. They had a valuation of him, and that was it. If it wasn't met, then he wasn't going anywhere. And then naturally, that unrest gets to the player, and the player was like, well, I can't do any more. I need to move from Scunthorpe. I should be getting this move, that move, and whatever. And it wasn't happening. And the bids weren't there. You can't make a bid up. The bids weren't there. And naturally, it just fizzled out. And I don't know where he actually went from then, because he decided
Fleetwood.
back to Fleetwood. Yeah. And I think he just saw his contract out and went on a free transfer. So, if you're doing that well and they're prepared to pay the money, you end up getting the move, So it didn't happen for him, and obviously his contract expired with us anyway, and he went to Fleetwood.
So, and also you spoke about representing Billy Sharp. When would that have been in his career?
So that wasn't at Scunny, to be fair. That was through the previous agency that I worked for initially. So that was his time at Sheffield United.
Donny.
It was Donny, yeah, and then on to Southampton. So it was then, yeah.
What was he like to deal with? Because obviously a prolific striker, and you had him right at the peak of his kind of performance. Was he a big ego, or was he easy to manage?
Well, I've always found Billy a good guy, to be quite honest. He was part of the agency that I told you about that I first joined. So he was under the actual, the guy who owned the business. It was more under him. But every time I dealt with Billy, and he was a good guy, got on well with him. I think it was more on the fact that I'd played the game as well. So he respected that, and I got on with him. I think certain people might have a different opinion on Billy. But he's a striker, scored goals. He's always going to be that type of character. That's what they are. And that's how Billy was, and he got the goals he deserved, the moves he deserved. So, fair play to him. But I always got on well with Billy. I thought he was a good guy to manage.
And you mentioned about the agency having represented Paddy Kenny. What was that like? I mean, Paddy's a character, isn't he? Did you have any direct dealings with him?
Yeah, exactly. Paddy was a character, no, he was throughout football. I played against Paddy a lot when he was at Bury years, at the start of his career. He was always a character then, but again, and he was part of the agency and under another manager really. But every time I came across Paddy, he was a good guy, and I didn't have many dealings with Paddy, to be quite honest, but but as he progressed through his career, he became more of a character for sure. Even now, he's still doing the after dinner speaking, isn't he, and doing well. Um,
Yeah, I read his autobiography actually. Not like he's so funny. He talks really at length actually about the issue with the drugs and stuff. And I wonder, would he have been under you at that time, or was he under a different agency?
I'm not too sure. I don't know. No, I wouldn't. I never came across that side of it, like the
No,
drugs and all that.
no,
So
no. So if anyone listening to this, it's definitely worth picking up his autobiography because he speaks quite
is it? Yeah.
candidly. Yeah, it's really good. It's a really good read actually. The other player you mentioned was Mark Jackson. You would have played alongside him, right?
Yeah, Jacko was a young player at Leeds United when I was there. He was a few years younger than me, so I knew him from Leeds. And then obviously when I came to Scunny, he was a firm fixture in the squad then. He suffered bad injuries at Scunny as well. He played a lot before I joined actually. Didn't play too much when I was there, um, which was down to mainly injuries as well. But was like club captain as well. But always a good character, good guy. Um, but great to manage Jacko. You know, he's doing well as a manager now. You know, out at Central Coast Mariners. You know, so won the treble last season, which is unheard of. You know, so he's really making waves over there and getting good recognition, which is good to see.
And finally, then, what does the future look like for Kevin Sharp in the world of football agency? Any ambitions?
Well, not. Listen, I'm just happy doing what I'm doing. I'm not one of them who's going to rule the world or anything like that. I just love the fact that I'm still involved in the industry. Enjoy watching games, watching players that you sort of. I like the fact I love a sort of hidden gem, if you will, a non-league one. If you can unearth one of them, that's great. Got a couple that hopefully might do that and progress on to do good things, and that's job satisfaction for me. Um, but yeah, I enjoy looking after the players. Some good players we look after, a real genuine good lads. So hopefully they kick on and have a good long career.
Actually, if you will just permit me one more. Andy Butler, you obviously played alongside him when he was at Scunthorpe, and as you mentioned, he's the manager now. What was he like as a person? Did he have those leadership qualities in the early days? Because he comes across quite now as being quite strong-minded, quite strong-willed.
Yeah, he is. He was always quite sensible as a younger one, to be fair. And I played left back that first season a lot at Scunthorpe, and he was left centre half. So I sort of helped him and guided him a little bit as well because you form them partnerships. But off the field, he was very very professional. You know, for a young man, um, but driven as well. He wanted to get better, wanted to improve, wanted to listen and learn. So he was, but on the flip side as well, he was a character. So he knew when to have a bit of a giggle as well, and he did. But there was a time to be serious. He was serious, and he knew when to be serious. And I'm glad he's really getting his opportunity now. You know, because he sort of finished his career and went to Donny Bell's, I think, didn't he? And had a spell of management there, and flirted with coaching at different clubs. But hopefully he'll do well at Scunny, and I'm sure he will, and get them back up the leagues where they deserve to be.
Well, thanks for joining us. This was Kevin Sharp on the Iron Hour podcast, and a big thank you to Scott Paxton for organising this for us and put us in touch. So thank you once again for joining us today, Kevin.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it.